Okay, the Jewish Game of Thrones Part 2. So last week we spoke about the four oldest sons of David Malach. We have Amnon, Kilav, Absalom, and Adoniyahu over here on our list over here. And we'll focus a little bit more on them today. We said that for some reason Kilav, number 2, is not really part of the running to be king after David Malach. So we'll just forget about him for now. And
why? What all are in contention?
We'll see. And so Amnon is the oldest son. So we said last week that you would assume that the oldest son is going to be the successor. The third son, his name is Absalom. So Absalom was the son of David Melech's wife, whose name was Macha bas Talmai Melech Geshur. Apparently, David Melech was once fighting a war in an area called Geshur. Geshur is, let's say, northeast of Eretz Yisrael, the area of like Syria now in present times. And he met the daughter of the king. Her name was Macha. The king's name was Talmai. And there's a halacha called Eshes Yifas Toyer that a Jewish soldier is allowed to, I wouldn't say kidnap, but sort of take captive a non-Jewish woman and marry her as part of the halachas of war. There's a lot of details exactly when it's what you're allowed to do, but I don't want to get into that. But that's more or less what the Gemara tells us about Shifas Ter. David Melech married this lady, Macha bas Talmai Melech Geshur, and she had with David Melech a son named Absalom. Now we're going to see that also she had this lady, Macha bas Talmai Melech Geshur, also had a daughter named Tamar. And there's a question in the Rishonim, in the early commentaries, whether Tamar was also a daughter of David Melech, but possibly a daughter of David Melech from before Macha bas Talmai converted, so she was not necessarily halachically related to David Melech's other children, or was she not even a daughter of David Melech? This Tamar was the daughter of Macha bas Talmai Melech Geshur, but she wasn't a daughter of David Melech, she was a daughter of Macha bas Talmai from let's say a different marriage or a different relationship, and she's not really related to David Melech L'chlal at all. She's not one of David Melech's children, and she just, let's say, grew up in the palace. And then the fourth one is Adoniyahu, which we're not going to get to today, but hopefully we'll speak about Adoniyahu tomorrow. Okay, so now we're again still not starting yet the book of Kings. We're still talking about what I call the two most controversial stories in the book of Samuel. This is Samuel 2, chapter 13. That's where it starts. And last week we saw the story of David and Bathsheba. Now we're going to see a different story about Absalom, Tamar, and Amnon. So the story goes like this. It says that Absalom had a sister named Tamar. We spoke about it already before, whether she was a daughter of David or not a daughter of David, but she was definitely a sister of Absalom. They shared the same mother of Macha bas Talmai Melech Geshur. Fine. So Absalom had a sister named Tamar.
If she was a guy, then she wasn't related really.
In a halachic way, in a chanami. Could be. So it says that Amnon, the son of David Melech, the number one contender for the throne, the oldest son of David Melech, he liked or loved this girl Tamar, and he loved her so much that he became sick over the fact that he wasn't able to be with her. And it was like he didn't know what to do. It was impossible for him to do anything, and he was love sick over her, and he didn't know what to do. So it says that he had a friend named Yonadav, the son of David Melech's brother Shema. So Yonadav, who was a first cousin of David Melech, was Amnon's friend. And it says in the pasuk that he was an Ish Chacham Ma'od. Chazal tell us Ish Chacham Ma'od means he was a Rasha. And this guy Yonadav tells Amnon, here's what you should do. You should feign illness, pretend like you're sick, and you should have Tamar come and bring you some food, and then when she comes to your room to bring you the food, you can do whatever you want with her. So that's what he did. Amnon pretended to be sick, and he sent a message to his father, to David Melech. He said, please let my sister Tamar come and bring some food for me so that I can eat from her hand. And David sent Tamar to go to attend to her brother, or the senior one of David's children, Amnon. David sent Tamar. He said, go prepare him some food, because he's sick. So she went. He was lying down in his bed, and she prepared some food for him, and he refused to eat. And then finally he said, everyone who's in the room, all the attendees, the servants, whatever, he wants them all out of the room. So he sent them all out of the room, and she offers him some food, and instead of taking the food, he grabs her, and he says, "Come lie with me, my sister." It could be that my sister is not necessarily exact because they weren't necessarily sisters, but he says, "Come lie with me," and she says, "No, my brother, don't violate me. We can't do such things. It's a despicable act. Don't do such a thing." She said to him, if you really wanted to marry me in a legitimate way, so you could go to the king and he wouldn't hold me back from you, and he would let you marry me. But Amnon didn't listen to her, and he forced himself upon her. He violated her. He laid with her, etc. Then the pasuk says that after Amnon was with her, so it says that afterwards he hated her it says Vayisna'eha Amnon sina gedela ma'od. Amnon hated her a great hatred, ki gedela hasina asher sineya me'ava asher ava, because now his hatred for her was greater than the love that he had originally loved her. So he switched. He used to love her, quote unquote, love her, and then he violated her. He raped her basically, and then now he hates her so much that the hatred is even stronger than the original love that he had for her. Then it says that he sent her away, and her reaction was, she had this fancy clothing that the king's daughters used to wear, colorful clothing, and she tore her clothing, and she put dirt on her head, or ashes on her head, and she walked around being all crying and everything. And so her brother Absalom, her complete brother, says to her, like, "Yo, what happened? What is it true that your brother Amnon violated you?" And he tells her, he says basically, "Don't worry, be quiet about it," and with the implication saying that, like, I'm going to take care of it. And so he brought Tamar into his own house, and he sort of kept her as part of his household. That's what Absalom did, and he sort of didn't. That's more or less the end of this part of the story. That's what happened over here. Then the pasuk says that David HaMelech heard about this whole story that happened, and he was very angry. And it says afterwards that Absalom never spoke to his older brother Amnon, whether for good, whether for bad. He never spoke to him, he ignored him. They weren't on talking terms because of this incident, because Absalom now hated his brother Amnon because he violated his sister Tamar. Now, it happens to be an interesting thing that the halachic definition of somebody who hates you, so the Mishnah in Masechah Sanhedrin says that, how do you know if someone hates you? The ramification would be that he's disqualified from giving testimony for or against you if he hates you. So that if you have somebody that you know who doesn't speak to you out of hatred for 3 days, so that means that he hates you. So here we see that in the story over here, that Avshalom hated his brother Amnon, and he didn't speak to him, whether for good, whether for bad. He didn't speak to him at all. Yeah, what's your question?
Is this the story of where his sister, like he goes and follows her because he's so attracted?
What?
Like
Yeah.
So I remember he was castrated or something.
Oh. So okay, fine. So you're jumping a few steps. So let's get to that. So one question is like this. We said that originally he quote unquote loved her, right? And then he did this despicable act upon her. And then it said that afterwards he hated her so much that the hatred was greater than the love that he originally had for her. So the question is, like, what's this switch from like black to white? It's like complete 180 degree switch, 360 degree switch from loving her so much to now hating her even more than he loved her. What changed over here? So what would you guys say? Any ideas why he would now he loved her and then now he hates her?
Because just so I'm clear, so basically he loved her, found her very attractive, violated her, and then he hated her.
Right.
Okay, so it's probably because I would guess that it's probably because he in his mind he genuinely sincerely loved her, and he said like I love you. He I guess violated in reality he violated, but in his head he was being very vulnerable, whatever. He was like showing her love, and it wasn't returned. And because probably he's like a child, very immature guy, has no idea like about whatever any like morals or ethics or anything like that. Like he handled it like a little kid would. It's like, oh, you don't like me, I don't like you, kind of thing. So it's like that's what I think. She didn't return.
You say he hated her because she didn't reciprocate.
He didn't reciprocate, and in his mind, it's like maybe such an immature mind that he couldn't like see what he was doing was wrong, and he couldn't see reality. He only saw his selfish point of view.
I hear it. You guys have it.
So not like she physically hurt him.
Well, it's like we'll get to that point in a moment.
But
The
is that,
guilt. I would say it's the guilt feeling. He knew he did something. Once he did something wrong,
yeah, like
that was like
father hated him, everyone
ultimate.
hated
Like,
him.
oh my gosh, but I
Right,
didn't.
so
Like he said,
he
he didn't really
himself.
love her.
He
Obviously,
hated
he just
himself.
like
Right.
how it is in
Yeah,
America.
that's
You
like
don't
the
really
sort
like
of the
her.
cliche that they say. A guy says, "Oh, I love fish." You don't really love
Right.
fish. You love it that the certain feeling that it gives your body when there's fish in your mouth. So you like that feeling. But you don't love fish. You love yourself. So like sort of the same idea that like he didn't really love her. He loves really himself.
So
It's like love on first sight, divorce on first fight. Yeah. Oh, what happened? He loved her so much yesterday, but now
Right.
she's nasty to him.
So
It
what happened?
It
Yeah.
makes
he
him
didn't like
disgusted.
her. He liked the way she made him feel.
Right. Something you could say something like that, and then let's say what if you
Lust.
say like
No,
she didn't reciprocate or it didn't really work out, so then he hated her, or you could sort of say like what you're saying that he felt guilty afterwards, and then her continued presence
Like her
just
usage.
made him feel every time he saw her, it just made him
Worse.
feel more and more guilty. It's like hit him in the face, like oh I did something wrong, I did something wrong, I did something wrong.
I think for someone to do that, he's too selfish to fully feel guilty. In my opinion, I don't even know how guilty he feels. I mean, I don't know the
No,
whole story.
afterwards you could have realized, oh my
Say-
God, you killed someone. Let's say you want to kill someone your whole life, but once you killed the guy, you're like, holy cow! I actually ended up burying the guy, and let's say it was his brother. He killed his brother. Right? No matter how angry he is, when he kills the person, he's like, it's a
Could
whole
be.
new feeling.
Could
It's like
be.
reality sets in. Like, what the heck did I just do? I
Could-
killed my brother.
But I guess it could be he did it completely out of passion, out of impulse. I don't know how long he did love her. Like, was the whole life? I mean, I don't know. Like, what
Yeah, it doesn't really give so many details like that.
Anyway, so maybe it
But-
could be that what he said, it was totally impulsive and he wasn't being himself. I think personally that this guy, I mean, like I said, I don't know, it sounds like he's just such a selfish guy, so self-centered that like he wouldn't even stop to think about his actions, and he just did it, and he's just totally selfish. She doesn't love me, so now I hate her, like a little kid.
But it could be. What's your name?
Natan.
Natan. So Natan was brought in a Gemara that sort of addresses this issue. The Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Chaf Aleph. So the Gemara says, why did he hate her? Because she tied a hair around him and made him a krus shafcha. So the Torah tells us there's a halacha that a ptsua daka, a person with crushed testicles, or a krus shafcha, a person with a severed male organ, is forbidden from marrying into the mainstream Jewish community, right? Because for whatever reasons, right? So
A kayan or anybody?
a regular any person.
Oh.
It's not allowed to marry a krus shofcha or a ptsua daka. So it says that what she did was she tied a hair and she made him into a krus shofcha. She sort of severed his member. So the Talmud is sort of saying that it wasn't that he hated her as like a sort of self-reflection of something that he did wrong or something that went wrong in what he was trying to do to her, but because it sounds like she did something to him, or she did it in some way, or he felt that she was doing something like that to him, and that's why he hated her. Not just because he wasn't able to achieve what he was trying to do, to achieve his love, but that something came back at him, and that's why he hated her. Without getting too graphic, I found two interesting explanations of what exactly the Gemara is talking about, how exactly the practicality of it works, from the two Sephardi Mukubalim from the early 1900s. So one is Rav Yehuda Fatia, who says a simple understanding that she took her hairs and she tied her opening very tightly with her hairs, and then when he tried to thrust himself in, without realizing what was happening there because he was in the heat of the moment, so the hairs were sort of like closing it very tightly, and then like he sort of like cut himself. But ouch, something like that. And Ben Ish Chai wants to say an idea that she put some sort of cream that made her hairs very sharp, and that was what sort of sliced him or something like that. I don't know. Don't try it at home. Fine.
Have to find the cream first.
What?
Have to find the cream first to start that.
Just out of curiosity, is there anything in the story that sort of hints at that? So I'm saying, where did they get that idea from?
The Gemara says that he hated her because she did something to him.
Oh.
So they're just explaining like what does it mean that she tied her hair and made him into a person with a severed member. So
No, but how did he? I was answering his question. He's saying like, where do you see that?
no,
happen?
we're saying we're not
He
seeing it
could've
in
broke
the
his foot.
we're not
He
seeing it
could've
in the verse, but we're seeing it in the Gemara says it.
But
Where did
he's
he's asking where the
anyone.
Gemara say? Where did the Gemara see it? I don't know. Maybe because it says he hated her, and we're going to assume that the hatred has to do with the act that happened or something like. Because it was right there on the spot, something like that. I don't know. So actually, the Gemara says that as a result of this story, so David HaMelech made a decree that an unmarried man and an unmarried woman are not allowed to be secluded alone. So we're familiar with the halach of yichud, that an unmarried man and an unmarried woman are allowed to be secluded alone. So the Gemara says that was a decree that David HaMelech instituted as in the aftermath of this story, specifically of this story.
Does that prove they weren't sisters?
Does that prove that they weren't sisters? It could be. I think that there's a Tesis in Kedushin that talks about that. Okay, so that's the first part of the story. Let's go to the continuation. The continuation is that like this. So we have just to recap, right? So we have Amnon who rapes Tamar, and then Absalom, who was Tamar's full sister, sort of takes Tamar under his wing, and Absalom very much hates Amnon right now. And we're going to see how Amnon gets his revenge. It says 2 years later, they were going to shear Absalom's sheep, and all the brothers of David HaMelech were coming to celebrate the shearing of Absalom's sheep together, and not just Amnon, but all of the brothers of all the sons of David HaMelech, they were all coming together, and Absalom instructs his servants that when Amnon comes to the party, they're making a big party. It says when Amnon comes to the party and he gets very drunk and he's very happy, so you should go and kill Amnon and strike him down. And don't worry, don't be scared. Whatever. I'm telling you, take care of Amnon. You'll kill him.
Who's saying this?
Avshalom.
To who?
To Avshalom's servants. So that's exactly what they did. They're at this party celebrating Avshalom's shearing of his sheep. All the sons of David Melech are there, and Amnon is, he's drinking and he's getting a little happy, and then Amnon's servants come, Avshalom's servants come, and they killed Amnon. So now Amnon is gone. And then, of course, the reaction of David HaMelech's other children is they all mount on their mules and they run away because they don't want to be next. What it seemed to them was that Avshalom was trying to consolidate his role as the next king, because he killed out the number one contender for the throne, the oldest son. For some reason, Kilov is not talked about. So now Avshalom, number 3, is the apparent heir. All the other kids. No, these are just the 4 that we're talking about. But all David HaMelech had 18 wives. You can imagine. Let's say each one had
15. Small family.
15 is. No, I wouldn't say 15, but let's say even if it was 5, right? So you're dealing with 60 people. So they all mounted their mules. They all ran away. And then there's a rumor comes to David HaMelech, and the rumor tells David HaMelech that your son Avshalom killed all your other sons, and none of them survived. And David HaMelech got very, very sad, and he tore his clothing, and he laid on the floor, and he was very sad. And then his cousin, this guy Yonadav, the son of his brother Shema, who we already mentioned him before, what?
He's the brother of who?
He's the brother of David HaMelech. Yonadav, the son of Shema, the brother of David HaMelech. So he's David HaMelech's first cousin. He's David HaMelech's nephew, sorry. Not first cousin, nephew.
His sister's kid.
What?
What is he? He's his cousin or is his nephew?
He's David HaMelech's nephew. David HaMelech's nephew.
Check the streets.
What? Yeah.
How's he David Melech's nephew again?
David Melech had a brother named Shima, and Shima had a son named Yonadav.
Brothers.
Okay, fine.
This is the same.
Yonadav is the nephew of.
Yonadav, who's the nephew of David Melech.
Got it.
This is the same guy who told Amnon that he should rape the Tamar. This is the same Yonadav. So this guy Yonadav comes in and he says to David Melech, "Don't worry, Absalom didn't really kill all your kids. All he did was he killed Amnon because Amnon raped his sister Tamar, and therefore that's what Absalom did. But your other kids are safe and sound." And then it says in the pasuk that Absalom ran away because he was scared of what might happen to him. And then after Absalom ran away, so all of David Melech's sons came back to the palace, I guess, or to Yerushalayim. And then this guy Yonadav again speaks up to David Melech and says, you see, I told you all your sons are safe. It was just this Amnon guy who got killed. It wasn't all your sons. And so it says that, so that's basically the end of this part of the story. And Absalom runs away. Where does he go? He goes to his maternal grandfather, to Talmai, the king of Geshur. Right? We said that
This is the father. This is father of David Melech, or
one of David Melech's fathers-in-law. His name was Talmai Melech Geshur. The mother, you missed the beginning part, but we said that in the beginning that the mother of Absalom and Tamar, her name was Macha, the daughter of Talmai Melech Geshur.
What was the name?
Macha, Mem Ayin Chaf Hey, the daughter of Talmai, the king of Geshur. And Geshur is this place that's northeast of Eretz Yisrael. So Absalom goes over there, he runs away to his maternal grandfather, and he lives there for about 3 years. That's what it says in the pasuk. It's an interesting thought. I didn't really see the commentary speak about this, but it'd be interesting to hear what you guys think about what was this guy Yonadav ben Shima, what was he thinking, and what's his role in this whole story? First, he appears in 3 times over here. First he tells Amnon that he should how exactly to rape his sister, how to arrange the situation that he would have the window to do that. Then afterwards, when Absalom kills Amnon, and the rumor comes to David Melech that Absalom killed everyone, so he tells David Melech, no, don't worry, it's just Amnon that he killed. He didn't kill everyone. And then afterwards, when all the sons come back, he tells David Melech, you see, I was right. What's this guy? What's he trying to do? What's his agenda?
He's trying to protect himself or something.
Is that
Who is this?
Yonadav ben Shima?
He's trying to protect himself from.
He's the guy who gave the advice to Amnon how to do this thing with his sister, and then afterwards, when Absalom killed Amnon,
He's covering his track.
Right.
Basically.
So
How is that solving?
What?
Trying to get close to David Melech.
He's trying to what?
Get close to David Melech.
What was his agenda in the first thing when he gave advice to
I'm
Amnon?
he's saying he's trying to cover up, he's going to
He's
catch
trying
him
to
for
cover
the
up
other
his
thing he
dirt.
did.
So you want
He's the one who's really doing
That's
the dirty
for sure.
work.
right, he's coming up with the dirty
He's
ideas.
coming with dirty ideas. Anything that.
You're saying why?
Like he's being all nice to him after
why
he did
help
his
Amnon?
scandal.
Right.
So he
He
wants to
wanted to
get
get rid of
What's his
Amnon.
agenda?
What?
He wanted to get rid of Amnon.
You say he set up Amnon.
Oh,
that was
Big-
his plan.
That's
He might try to
an
get rid of
interesting
Absalom
thing.
too, but
That's
we
what
don't
I
know.
think.
Why would you assume
He
that?
wanted, maybe he
You're
wanted
just
to-
a bad guy giving him advice. He's trying to kill Amnon. What does he have agenda with Amnon?
Right.
Where do we see anywhere in the story that he's trying
Possible that he
to telling
wants
this
to
crazy
ingratiate
advice
but I'm
himself
saying-
when
with-
he
Well,
knew he would get killed
wait, wait,
anyways?
wait, Like
It's
what?
possible that he wants to ingratiate himself with the potential next king. I mean, Amnon, you said, was the oldest, I think, and therefore most obvious is next in line.
So he's trying to suck up to him over there, and then when he got killed,
He's
so
like,
then.
oh, crap,
You
this
want
is
to-
my fault. I better do something to hide.
So I was thinking something more along the lines of that, but you guys are all saying good ideas. Maybe he was setting him up. I don't know. What were you saying? I forgot.
That he was trying to cover up.
They was trying to cover up. There's different ideas you could say. It's something that the commentators don't speak about. So it's left to our own devices to sort of try to figure out a good interpretation of it.
This is in Malachim.
This is in Shmuel Bet.
That's what we're learning right now?
Okay.
We're learning 2 stories in Shmuel Bet as an introduction to the beginning of Sefer Malachim, which hopefully we'll start tomorrow.
I assume there's a
Which parak
lesson.
is this?
This story is in Parak Yud Gimel.
And ultimately, there's going to be a big lesson from the story. You're saying
What?
about a tabloid type of story.
I mean,
He's
we're trying to
killed
we're trying to
him,
get to
crazy
we're trying to get
New
to setting
York
up how
Post.
we're going to see who's going to succeed David Melech. So we see now that it's not going to be
Saying
Amnon.
just random facts like how it happened.
We're trying to get a picture of the succession of the kings of the Davidic dynasty.
She's saying it's not really so relevant to the story.
Fine. So the next part of the story is like this. So Absalom is there for 3 years by his grandfather, the king of Geshur, and basically after 3 years, Yoav, who is David HaMelech's main general, he comes up with this whole idea that he wants Absalom to come back. So he has this whole elaborate lesson that he teaches David HaMelech with this. He brings a lady about whatever. He brings a whole story to David HaMelech, and he convinces basically David HaMelech to allow him to bring Absalom back to Yerushalayim. So basically, Yoav goes to Geshur and he brings Absalom back to Yerushalayim. After Absalom had been there for 3 years, and and even though Absalom comes back to Yerushalayim, but the king David HaMelech, he says, I don't want to see his face. He can be around in Yerushalayim, you can go to his house, but I don't want to see him, because David HaMelech was very upset about what Absalom had done to killing his oldest son Amnon, so he didn't want to have to deal with
He
Amnon.
didn't deserve
David
pizza.
Amelech sentenced him to death or no?
No.
If you wanted.
No, he
Doesn't
could
matter.
have.
He could have, but
You
Yeah.
can't stop him. Say what do you mean?
no.
You have to have a reason. Because he killed someone, he has to. He's not business.
Yeah.
You have to be my malchus. If he's my malchus, you can't just stop him. What he felt he was wrong. Obviously, what to just
But did
kill.
he know that he killed his oldest son?
Yeah, it seemed that he knew it. I mean, this guy told him. Yeah, everyone knew it. It was
He ran
it was
away.
in public. It was But so David HaMelech didn't want to see Absalom. And then here at this point, the pasuk tells us some interesting facts about Absalom, which will be relevant in the continuation of the story. It tells us that Absalom was a very good-looking person, and there was nobody who was as good-looking as he was. And his hair was very, very long. And every so often he would take the weight of his hair, and it says when he would have his hair barbered at the end of every year, he would have his hair barbered because it became very heavy upon him, and he had it barbered. He weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels by the king's weight. So he had a lot very long hair, and it weighed a lot of 200 shekels is not a monetary currency. It's 200 shekels is a weight. It weighed had a lot of mass. So he had long hair. It's going to be an important fact in the story later on. And it says that Absalom had 3 sons and 1 daughter, and he named his daughter Tamar because
What happened?
it would seem that he's naming it after his sister who was violated in that way. And it says that Tamar also was a very beautiful lady. Okay, so Absalom lives in Yerushalayim now, after having been in the kingdom of Geshur for 3 years. Now he's living in Yerushalayim, and it's been 2 years since he came back to Yerushalayim, and he still hasn't seen the face of his father yet. So he sends a message to Yoav, to David HaMelech's main general. He says to Yoav, he says, I want to see my father. Like, the whole point of me coming to moving back to Yerushalayim was so I could reconcile with my father, and what's the point of me being here? I might as well go back to Geshur. And he sends a message to Yoav, and Yoav doesn't answer him back. So he sends a message again, Yoav doesn't answer him back. He says, okay, I want to try to get Yoav's attention so I could try to reconcile with my father. So what does he do? He has his servants, went and he told his servants to go burn the field of Yoav, and that would catch his attention. So then Yoav comes running into him and saying, whoa, what happened over here? Why did your servants burn my field? So he says, I'm trying to get your attention because you're ignoring my messages. He said, I want to reconcile with my father. I came here from Geshur so that I can can speak to my father. I haven't seen him for 2 years. So Yoav goes to David HaMelech, and Yoav tells them all this whole story that Absalom wants to reconcile with him. And so David HaMelech says, okay, fine. And David HaMelech allows his son Absalom to come back, and he comes and he kisses him, and everything is hunky-dory.
What was the point of burning his fields to get attention? Like why was he ignoring in the first place?
Not sure.
Maybe he didn't think David would want to speak to him. Get involved.
It says over here that the Malbim says that Yoav felt that he wasn't going to be able to facilitate a full reconciliation between David and Absalom, so he didn't want to be involved in it because the schism was too great. that Avshalom had killed his successor or his heir apparent, so he didn't think that he would be able to bring a complete reconciliation between the two.
So when I'm with this field, it's like, forget about them. Like, suppose you paid back for them.
Maybe he paid him too. I don't know. That wasn't. It doesn't speak about that. It was just using that as like how Avshalom was able to get the attention of Yoav. Right. So that's so far the story over here. So now it seems like Absalom and David HaMelech have sort of reconciled, and now he's back in favor of the king, etc. Now the beginning of chapter 15 in Shmuel Beis says like this. After some time, so Absalom prepared for himself a chariot and horses, and he had 50 men running in front of him, meaning he's going to try to start positioning himself, posturing and positioning himself as the future king. And it says that what he would do is that he would get up early in the morning, and he would stand by the gate to the king's palace. And one of the things that the Gemara and the Navi says about David HaMelech was that he was a judge. That's one of the roles of a king, is a sort of an oversight of the judicial branch. Like there's Bezdin and Sanhedrin, but you can also go to the king, and the king has certain judicial powers to adjudicate cases and things like that. So people used to come to David HaMelech to discuss different cases. So he would stand by the gate, and anyone who would come for litigation, so Avshalom would go over to the guy and say like, what are you coming for? And the guy would tell him, so I know this guy owes me money, and I want to try to get the king to rule that the guy owes me money or something like that. And Avshalom would like sort of suck up to these people, and he would say to them, you're a really good guy, and you should really win your case. I don't know if there's going to be any justice, but you really deserve it. And if I was in charge, I would for sure help you out and make you win. And in this way, he was sort of gaining the favor of the masses. He was setting himself up in that way. And it says that whenever people would come and to bow down in front of Absalom, so he would like take their hand and kiss it, as if to say like, no, you don't have to bow down to me. I'm a person of the people. I'm with you. I'm with the masses. And in that way, the pasuk says, "Vayignav Absalom es leiv anshe Yisrael." Absalom stole the hearts of the people of Israel. And that's how he was able to get on their good side. It says that in the 40th year, which Chazal, the rabbis tell us that this is not the 40th year of David's reign, because David only reigned the 40 years, but this is the 40th year since the Jews had originally asked for a king, which is, let's say, the 2 years of King Saul, and let's say the 1 year that they asked for a king. So this is 3 years before King David's reign, which make 3 years from before King David is when these 40 years started. So this is really 37 years into King David's reign. So 37th year of David HaMelech's reign. So this is when this story happens. Basically, what happens is that Avshalom goes to the city of Hebron, which has certain implications, because that was the city where David HaMelech himself was coronated. And basically, Absalom has himself declared king, and as a result, he has himself basically declared king.
Oh.
What?
Oh.
What do you mean from whom?
He said declared. Yeah, like he said. I said I'm president. Or what?
No, he sent people to all over the country, and he told them that if you hear the blowing of a shofar coming from Hebron, so everyone should call out Malach Avshalom b'Hebron, and everyone will know that he became king from Hebron. So he went there, and then they blew the shofar, and then everyone realized that Avshalom has become king, and then they sort of decided that okay, now Avshalom is the new king, even though David Melech was still alive. What? So David's reaction is that he's going to go into exile and sort of wait for this whole thing to die down, and then also keep the military option that he might end up fighting with Absalom and Absalom's people, and then he would try to regain his kingship.
He deserved death, right? Because
he's
total
for sure.
Yeah.
He's rebelling against the king.
No more mouths than that.
Right.
Yeah, he's the king.
So there's a whole. So
King Shlomo didn't come after David.
yeah, but that's way. We're not going to get up to that yet.
I mean, but consecutively after.
Yeah.
So there's like 3 more years until.
Yeah, for sure.
And so Absalom's name is Is that supposed to?
We'll get to. So so then the psukim over here give a whole elaborate description of like how David Melech wants to like split up. Some people will stay in Yerushalayim, some people will come with him into exile, etc. We don't have to go all the way into all these details.
Where did he go?
He went, I believe he went across the Yarden.
Jordan?
Yeah.
That's a good place.
Where did he go? I think that's where he went. So anyway, so David Melech goes, and there's this man Achitophel who we mentioned last week. He was the grandfather of Bathsheba, of David Melech's 18th wife Bathsheba, and Achitophel was an advisor of David Melech, and he joins up with Absalom. So he joins Absalom's rebellion. And David Melech has this guy Hushai, whose name literally means like being quiet, and he was a spy that David Melech sent to Absalom's side to like sort of be a secret agent for David Melech within Absalom's camp. So basically, there's this whole idea that Achitophel has these different advices that he gives to Absalom. So one advice that he gives Absalom is that Absalom should consort with David Melech's concubines, which would solidify to everybody that he's really taking this rebellion seriously, because that's something that like once you do it, there's no going back. So he's showing that like, oh, I really consider myself as like the king, because if I didn't consider myself like the king, I wouldn't do something that outlandish, let's say. And so Achitophel.
You saying he was going to live with David Melech's wives?
Yeah.
And that was 100% usher?
It's usher for multiple reasons. One is because it's usher for a person to live with his father's wife,
right.
And then it's also usher because something that belonged to the king, you're not allowed to just usurp the king's property and use it for yourself.
They were still married to David?
It would seem so, yeah.
So forget it. It's usher anyway.
So that depends on how you learn what the definition of a pilegish is. Is pilegish with kedushin, without kedushin, machlekes Rashi and Ramban.
Yeah.
But whatever, we don't have to get into that whole discussion of that.
Right.
So Achitophel has this whole idea that he wants to do a surprise attack on David Melech, and this guy Hushai, who is David Melech's secret agent over there, he tells him, no, don't do it. And then what happens is that Absalom ultimately sides with Hushai. He doesn't end up doing this surprise attack, and as a result of that, actually, the pasuk says that Achitophel committed suicide. He felt so slighted to his honor that Absalom didn't listen to his advice that he just killed himself. Well, okay, fine. There's a whole elaborate descriptions and everything setting up this battle between Absalom's loyalists and David Melech's loyalists coming to fight. And basically, David Melech is sending out his army general Yoav, same guy Yoav again, and he tells his army, he tells Yoav especially, he says, it says B'tzavais HaMelech. No, what does it say? It says that he said, La'at li lanai la'Avshalom. He says, be gentle with the boy Avshalom. David Melech is going out to be fighting his son's army, but he's telling his main general, he's telling have some pity on him, have some mercy. No, don't kill him. We didn't say capture him dead or alive. We said capture him alive. Don't kill him. So it goes out, and there's a whole battle, and the army of David Melech beats the army of Absalom, and basically that's more or less the resolution of the military aspect of what was happening over here. Basically, David Melech's army wins, and Absalom is riding on his mule, and what happens is that he comes across a thicket of branches, and his long hair gets stuck in the branches, and his mule actually went up from under him and traveled away. So what happened was that Absalom was left hanging in a tree by his hair, which is a very vulnerable position for a person to be in, hanging from the tree by his hair. So actually there's a medrash that says that he looked down, and what he saw downwards was the opening to the gates of Gehenna. So it says, the Medrash says, like, why didn't he take out his sword and cut his hair and just like come down from the tree? Because he saw that if he would cut his hair down, he would fall down and fall straight into the pits of Gehenna. So he didn't want to do that. I think that, the way the commentaries explain it is that he realized that his opposition to the King David, to his father, David Malach, would cost him his portion in Olam Haba. And if he would cut down his hair and come down from the tree, so he would sort of actively perpetuate his opposition to David Malach, and by doing so he'd be forfeiting his chelik in Olam Haba, his portion of the world to come. So he was, in a way, doing tshuva by not continuing the fight. Say, okay, this is the situation I'm in. I'm not going to try to continue fighting against David and Malach. I'm going to just leave it the way it is right now.
He couldn't cut his hair.
So in a way, he was sort of doing tshuva. What?
He couldn't not continue and cut his hair off? That would be
I don't know. The assumption would be that if he cut his hair, came down, he would just have to...
Basically, God gave him some sort of like
message.
moment of clarity. Like, hold
Yeah.
on, like, let's look at what you...
Yeah.
We all get that.
So basically, one of the soldiers from David Malach's army saw, here's our enemy Absalom hanging from the tree by his hair. So he goes, he tells the general Yoav and says, here's Absalom hanging from the tree with his hair. So Absalom says, so why don't you go kill him? So the guy says, no, I can't kill him. David Malach said, don't kill my son. Right? So Yoav says, okay, let me take care of this. So Yoav goes and he basically has his personal armor bearers come circle around Absalom, and they basically killed him. They thrust 3 staves in. He took 3 staves and they thrust them in Absalom's heart. They put a stake through his heart while he was still alive, and then he had his three soldiers come and he killed him. And then Yoav blew the shofar and he said, "Okay, the battle is over. We've defeated Absalom." Basically, Yoav had he didn't listen to the command that David Malach told him not to kill the kid, don't kill Absalom, but he ended up killing Absalom. So now, Absalom is out. Okay.
So we got a king.
What?
We got a king.
Yoav gets his punishment. We're not going to get into all the details of what happens with Yoav and what doesn't happen. That actually comes up in the beginning of Sefer Melachim. David Malach telling Shlomo that he should punish Yoav for this and for other people that Yoav killed throughout the book of Samuel.
Not to leave Yusha, that was someone else.
There's other people that Yoav killed that he shouldn't have necessarily killed. So that's basically the end of the rebellion of Absalom, and they tell David Malach about it, and of course David Malach's reaction, you would think, he'd be happy. Oh, this whole rebellion is over. I can go back home. But of course, he's not so happy because it was his son who's dead. So he's very sad. And the pasuk says that he was in great mourning, and it says that he kept calling out, "Avshalom, bini, bini, Avshalom, Avshalom." He was saying his son's name over and over again and crying. And the Chazal tell us that the Gemara in Saita says that each time that David Malach said the name of Avshalom in his mourning, so he was bringing up Avshalom from different levels of Gehenna towards his final resting place, I guess, in Gan Eden or something like that, as a sort of kapara, an atonement for the sins that Absalom had done. So each time David Malach said his name, it took him up one level. I don't know if this jives with what we said before from the Medrash, that by not cutting his hair, he was sort of doing tshuva. Because if he did tshuva at the end of his life, so then why would he need David Malach to say his name to get out of Gehenna? I'm not sure exactly how those things work out.
There were other things he did wrong.
What?
There were other
Yeah,
things.
okay, there were that's
wasn't
true.
part of this.
There were other things. Fine. So that's more or less the story of the rebellion of Absalom and how the rebellion came to an end. There's a few interesting points that we'll sort of close up with. The Mishnah in Saita, there's a concept that you guys are probably familiar with called Mida Keneged Mida. That Hashem metes out punishments and gives reward for, let's say, punishments for sins and reward for doing good things. Mida Keneged Mida, measurement according to measurement. The punishment sort of has to fit the sin, and the reward sort of has to fit the mitzvah that a person did. So the Mishnah says that Avshalom got punished Mida Keneged Mida. His punishment, one of the sins that Avshalom had done was that he became haughty through his hair. The pasuk, the Navi made a point of saying that Avshalom was very good looking and he had long hair, and he would cut his hair once a year and measure it and see how much it weighed and make a whole big production out of cutting his hair. So that showed that Avshalom was too into himself because of his long hair. So the Mishnah says that ultimately his long hair would prove to be his downfall. So that's one of the examples that the Mishnah says of this concept of midah keneged midah, that Hashem punishes a person in measurement commensurate with the sin that they had sort of done. It's an important lesson that we learn from this story of Avshalom. Last week I mentioned that by the story of David and Bathsheba, that in the aftermath of the story of David and Bathsheba, so Nason the Navi said to David HaMelech, he said to him, what were the words? Hineni make him alacha ra'a mi beisecha. Behold, I shall raise evil against you from your own household. So I was talking about this Gemara in Brachos Daf Zayin Amud Beis that explains what does that mean. I'm going to bring against you evil from your household. I sort of said it not 100% accurate. What the Gemara says is that David HaMelech originally thought that, somebody from my own household might be a mamzer, an illegitimate child, it might be an eved, a servant from my household that might come up against me, and that's who's going to cause trouble. But then, in the story of Avshalom's rebellion, David HaMelech realized that the ra'a mi beisecha, the evil that's going to come from your house, was the story of Avshalom, and he knows that the mercy that a son would be expected to have for his father is something that you could count on. So David HaMelech realized, whatever is going to be the outcome of this story is not going to be as bad. So he was sort of consoled, or his fears were abated by the fact that it was his own son that was going to be coming up against him, as opposed to some foreigner or a mamzer. A mamzer is an illegitimate child, an illegitimate in the halachic sense, which means he's born from certain forbidden relations. That rabbinic tradition tells us that a mamzer is usually going to be a person who's overly brazen and won't have pity on anybody. But here it was Avshalom who was his legitimate child, so he felt that he was able to calm down from the warning that the Nasan HaNavi gave him. We also mentioned over there last week that Nasan HaNavi tried to rebuke David HaMelech with this whole elaborate story about the rich man who had a bunch of sheep and the poor man who only had one sheep, and the rich man took one of the poor man's sheep in order to feed his guests or whatever, and he asked David HaMelech, what's the halacha? David HaMelech said you have to pay back 4 times. Right? So what's the 4 times? So the way the Gemara explains it is that David HaMelech said what his own punishment is going to be. 4 times. David HaMelech had to pay back 4 times. He's going to pay back his punishment is going to be that he's going to experience the loss of 4 children as a punishment for taking the wife of Uriah Achiti. And those 4 children, the Gemara says, was first of all that child that he had with Bathsheba, the first child that became sick and died 7 days later. So that child died, and then the second child that David HaMelech lost was Amnon, and then Avshalom, right? So that's 3. And then also the Gemara says, for some reason, Tamar. Tamar is also included in this list. Now, it's interesting because it doesn't say really anything. It doesn't say in the Navi what happened to Tamar after this story. It just says, he raped her, the Amnon raped her, and then Avshalom took her into his house. And then it says later on that Absalom had a daughter and he named her Tamar, but we don't know anything that happened about David HaMelech's daughter or stepdaughter Tamar.
He named people
After they passed, you want to assume that she died. It doesn't say that she died, but you want to say maybe she died, and you just it could be. So that would be a punishment. I was thinking maybe a slightly different idea, a little bit more, maybe somewhat esoteric idea. There's a halacha that a person is supposed to give up his life for any sin in the Torah, except for the 3 cardinal sins. Right? So if someone puts a gun to your head and says, turn on the light on Shabbos, so you're supposed to turn on the light. You don't have to give up your life for not turning on the light on Shabbos. But if someone puts a gun to your head for these three cardinal sins, so that a person is supposed to allow himself to give up his life. Those sins are Gilui Arayos, Shfichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah. Gilui Arayos is forbidden sexual relations, and murder, and doing idolatry. So if someone puts a gun to your head and says, okay, you go kill so-and-so, so you're not allowed to go kill him, you have to allow yourself to be killed instead of killing somebody else. Right? And the Gemara says, what's the source of that halacha that you're not allowed to, that you have to give up your life in order to not kill somebody? So the Gemara says that it's a svara, it's logical, it makes sense, because who said that your blood is redder than his blood? Why is your blood more red than his blood? So why are you more important than him? Right? So therefore, you should just not do anything, and then allow the guy who put the gun to your head, he's going to kill you. Yeah, what's your question?
Isn't there like kind of this like idolatry though? Because I remember a little while ago talking about how like if it's in public, you have to like.
Yeah, fine. Those are if it's in public, so then it could be for any sin. There's an opinion that says only for idolatry you have to give up your life, but this is the mainstream, the general idea.
Only a Jew, not an non-Jew?
What? Does what? To kill a non-Jew? I'm not sure.
There's no b'chai b'hem, so then
It could be subject to dispute. I don't remember offhand exactly all the details.
They have to give up their life.
But the question is like this. So that's the source that a person should rather give up his life than to murder somebody else. Now, what's the source that a person should rather give up his life and not commit a sexual prohibition? What's the source for that? So the Gemara says because victims of sexual prohibitions are conceptually similar to victims of homicide. The Gemara brings a pasuk. The verse says, in regard to a married woman who's raped, that if she does it willingly, so that's called adultery, and you put her to death. But if she's forcibly taken, even though she's a married woman, you say v'lanara le'sasa davar. You don't do anything to the girl, ki ein lanara chet maves, because she doesn't have a sin that's punishable by death. Because it's like murder. Just like somebody goes and he murders his friend, so too someone went and did something against her. So she's not a sinner, she's a victim. Right? So she's a victim, and that's it. So in a way, the Gemara is drawing a comparison between a victim of sexual violence and the victim of murder. So I guess in some sort of esoteric way, you could say that even if we don't have proof that Tamar actually died, but we would say that Tamar is one of the four people that her quote-unquote death in a sort of esoteric way was a punishment to David Melech, because we're not talking about a literal death, but we're talking about her rape that was sort of a tantamount to death, and that's what was the kapara for David Melech. That's sort of my suggestion in what the Gemara might mean. Fine, so now we have gotten rid of Amnon, we got rid of Absalom, and now we are ready to start tomorrow the beginning of Sefer Malachim of Kings 1, chapter 1. Thank you for coming, thank you for staying.